Recently I made a video about this camera. It has the same sized sensor as this professional camcorder, but in a much smaller body, but it had one downside, and that is that it didn't have any image stabilization. But today I got the second version, which is called the Sony RX0 Mark II. And this one does have image stabilization and a lot of features that the old one didn't have. We will also compare the RX0 Mark II to a professional camcorder. So how good is the Sony RX0 Mark II today? When we take a look at both cameras, they almost look identical. You can see that the newer generation has the Mark II icon, but the new one, even though it has the same sensor and lens, has a lot more features. So the first thing is this flip screen. As you can see, now you can use it for vlogging because it's really easy to see yourself, and you can move the screen up or down, so you can put it in a lot of different positions, and I really like that feature. It gives so much more flexibility compared to having the screen here stuck on the back of the camera. The second feature is that it has an internal gyroscope. This means it can read the motion and then compensate for stabilization. The camera has a built-in basic stabilization mode, so when you turn that on you will get a much more stable image compared to using the first generation. This camera can also shoot in 4K at 100 megabits per second, whereas the old one could only shoot in 1080p. And I prefer to shoot at 60 megabits per second because that makes the file sizes low while still having enough detail. The stabilization works in 4K and Full HD. And when we take a look at the 4K image quality, you can see how nice the image looks. There is a lot of detail, and because it has a larger sensor, you can get a little bit of a background blur. So this is not like a regular action camera where you will get everything in focus and a very wide angle field of view. No, you get a normal field of view and the image looks like it was shot on an actual camera instead of an action cam. But it still has the old focus modes of the original camera. So you have a preset focus mode where you can press the button to switch between infinity focus and close focus. Or you have manual focus but no continuous autofocus. But if you update the firmware on this, you can use single shot autofocus while you are recording. But then you will get a lot of movement. So I just prefer to stick to the preset focus mode where you can press the button and then it will switch between a close-up or a far image. And it also has the newer XAVC S option. So on the RX0 Mark II you can shoot on the lower bitrate XAVC S, whereas if you wanted to get a lower bitrate on the original RX0, you needed to switch to MP4, which had a lot worse compression. So with this camera you can still get some really nice Full HD videos while still having a small file size. And with something like a bigger compact camera like the RX100 lineup, I could fit it in my pocket, but this camera is even smaller, so I can fit it in the same pocket as my wallet. So that means I can easily carry it around everywhere. And you have full picture profile customization on here, so you can change all the things like the highlight roll-off, the saturation. If you wanted to shoot in S-Log 2 or Cine 1 or 2, you could all adjust it in the camera, and I think that is an amazing option. So instead of the standard colors, you can customize everything to what you like. And that is very impressive for a camera that is this size, because it can get similar image quality to a professional camera like this. So let's go outside and see the difference between these two in terms of image quality. Because can this compact camera compete with a professional camcorder? So right now I'm shooting on both the Sony PXW-X70 and the Sony RX0 Mark II. Right now I'm shooting both in Full HD and I want to get a small file size. So the PXW-X70 is shooting at 17 megabits per second and the RX0 Mark II is shooting in 16 megabits per second. So which one has a better image quality? Let me know in the comments down below. So this is a very impressive camera for its size because it can get the same image quality as something like this while being a pocket camera. But you definitely do need to know how to use this, so this is not a camera meant for beginners. And that is because it doesn't have full autofocus modes and you need to know how to use the camera to get a good image. So this isn't really just quickly pointing and shooting, because the image stabilization built into the camera is worse compared to something like a GoPro. The field of view is also much more zoomed in and it doesn't have a fully automatic focus mode. So right now I'm doing a quick video test using the Sony RX0 II. I have the flip screen so I can see myself. I'm using the internal microphone and the standard stabilization in camera is turned on. I'm holding it at arm's length so you can see it is a pretty zoomed in image. So how does the image quality look? And right now I'm shooting in the HD mode. So this isn't 4K. This is the lower bitrate 16 megabits per second HD image. And now the focus mode is on single shot AF, so if I get closer and then half press, you can see that it will focus again. But you can see that the camera moves when it is focusing. So I'm not a big fan of this focus mode. So now if I want to get these leaves in focus, I need to half press. And now it gets them in focus. But now if I move to the background, it isn't in focus, so I need to half press again. And then it focuses, but that is very annoying. So I prefer to use the near or far mode, because then you don't get this moving image. So is the RX0 II the perfect vlogging camera? Well, sadly, no camera is perfect, so it definitely has a few downsides. Even though it does have a microphone jack, the microphone itself does like to pick up a lot of wind noise sometimes, so there isn't any advanced noise reduction. But what you can also do is turn off the stabilization in the camera and then later in post adjust how much stabilization you want. And because it has a gyroscope sensor inside, it can read where the camera is positioned and then it can correct it later in post. So when you import the footage and you adjust the stabilization, you can make it look almost like it was shot on a gimbal. It is very impressive what you can do with the footage. But it will be an extra step. So the software that I use is called Gyroflow, and this also works on GoPros if you turn off the stabilization on them. But it also works with this camera, so that is really cool. And then you can adjust how much stabilization you want. And if you have a camera with a fisheye distortion, it can also fix it, but this lens doesn't have any fisheye distortion luckily. And then you can get a really nice and smooth image. But keep in mind, it does crop in the image a little bit, and you need to re-export the video, so that might take a little bit of time. So if you want a much faster workflow, you can turn on the basic stabilization in this camera, which works decent, but then you will definitely get a handheld look instead of a very nice and smooth image. Another downside is the battery life. It is the same battery used as in the first generation. The battery is very small, which means that you can only get like half an hour of 4K recording, and I think about 45 minutes to an hour if you're shooting in Full HD. So that isn't a lot. Another downside, but also upside, is that it has the full Sony menu system. So that means you have a lot of customization in the camera, but that also means that if you're using this camera for the first time, you definitely need to get used to it, because it has these small buttons and a tiny screen with a lot of options in the menu settings. So again, that is why this isn't really meant for beginners. But the RX0 II has definitely made so many upgrades compared to the original version, so now it can finally be used for a lot of other things. So vlogging, because it has a flip screen, but also for normal video shooting, because it has image stabilization.